most clearly where Christians treasure Christ more than they treasure what they're losing. Child, health, life, marriage. If you get in God's face and begin to demean Him or belittle Him or diss Him because of something that's being taken away, you're showing where your treasure is. And it doesn't speak well to the world about Him being our supreme treasure. There's the big issue. That's the big issue of this seminar. That's the big issue of the book of Job. That's what Satan wanted not to be known. That God is more valuable than Job's family. He desperately didn't want that to be known. That's number 9. Number 10, Job is the main book in the Bible for dealing with this issue straight up. It can help us with all of these things. It was written, unlike any of the other books, mainly for this. The issue is all over the Bible, but Job is where it comes to a head, as we heard Scott quote from James 5:11. I wrote down one more as I was coming over here. This is number 11. In my own name, I have no right to address suffering people about suffering. I haven't suffered much. And I thought today, as I reflected on that, okay, but there aren't two classes of people in the world, sufferers and non-sufferers. There are hundreds of classes of people, namely everybody suffering at different levels. Some more one day, some less another day, some more one year, less another year. And therefore, if we start saying who can talk to whom about how much they've suffered, almost nobody will talk to anybody about this. Besides that, I do not speak to you in my own name, and I would encourage you not to believe anything John Piper says that is not warranted by the Bible. If I cannot show you what I say in the Bible, you have a full reason to say, not sure about that, and put it on the question mark and go home and think about it. So mainly we're going to be looking at the Bible in this session. So if you have a Bible, which I hope you do, let's go to Job. It's almost in the middle of the Bible, a little bit before Psalms. Right before Psalms. We'll get maybe through chapter 31 tonight. You believe that? I never get through 31 chapters in years, let alone minutes. But that's my goal, and if I don't reach it, I'll quicken the pace tomorrow. Job chapter 1. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. So the author sets up the book with a very good man. Nobody like him. Blameless, upright, feared, reverenced, treasured God. I don't think the word fear is slavish. Doesn't work in the context if it's a kind of cowering, slavish fear. It's a kind of trembling wonder and awe and delight to come into the presence of God and the fear that you would do anything to dishonor Him or demean Him or belittle His value. He fears him, and the implication or the result of that in his life was that he turned away from evil. Verse 2. There were born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He possessed 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. So his goodness had been blessed with prosperity, as many of yours has. Verse 4. His sons used to go and hold a feast. Now, this is an illustration of the kind of uprightness that he has. His sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one on his day, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. And when the days of the feast had run their course, Job would send and consecrate them, and he would rise early in the morning and burn burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For, Job said, it may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. And thus Job did continually. And what comes out there are 2 things about Job. One, a jealousy for the name of God. My kids curse the name of God. I want to make that right as a dad can make it. And the second thing is concern for his kids. If they've cursed God, oh God, would you receive this offering? Would you have mercy upon my children? This is what dads do. They get up in the morning, they pray for their kids. Right, dads? Right, dads? We get up in the morning and we lay hold on God and say, preserve those marriages, oh God. Keep their faith, oh God. Guard their orthodoxy, oh God. Protect their children. Guard their hearts. Fight for my kids, God. And you pray it a lot more when they're adults. Or maybe most when they're teenagers. Although now, I don't think that's true. Because I only have one teenager. She's 13 and all my boys are grown, and I'm mainly concerned about them. Then the calamity came. I'm going to skip over verses 6 to 12 and come back to it in a moment. Now, there was a day when his sons and daughters, this is verse 13, chapter 1, verse 13. There was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. So we were having one of those parties. And there came a messenger to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them and struck down the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Verse 16. While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Verse 17. While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 groups and made a raid, and the camels, they took them and struck down the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Verse 18, and while he was yet speaking, there came another and said, your sons and your daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And behold, a great wind, maybe a tornado, came across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young people, and they're dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Well, so much for Job's prosperity in one afternoon. All of his possessions are gone, and all of his children are dead in one afternoon. The most upright, the most God-fearing man in the East. What happened?